everybody. Welcome to Feedback for the week of October 24th, 2011. Gonna get right into it. An incredible group today with me from the MMO Report, from Bearded Monthly. Mr. Casey Schreiner.
Hi, everybody.
Is here. Hello, Casey. Obviously, we're going to be talking about MMOs at some point today. The very lovely Jessica Chobot, taking a break from Japan life to talk real things in real life.
Yep, that's right.
Thank you for being here. And then a man who we've interviewed quite a few times on X-Play, the architect, some would say, of the Halo universe at the moment, Mr. Frank O'Connor is here as well, who deserves some applause. Very busy man. You guys are coming out with a game that people maybe played 10 years ago. I don't know. It's a thing. We'll talk about the Halo franchise. Halo is what they call it. Halo franchise a little bit later on today, but thank you for being here. We know you're very busy. Getting right into it, BlizzCon was last week. If you don't have the internet, how are you watching this? But Casey happened to be there, for those of you that don't have the internet and did not hear any of the news. The big news, obviously, the new WoW expansion, along with the to-be-expected, as usual, level cap raising. They're raising the level cap to 90.
Yeah.
There's a lot of actually really interesting new things they're bringing to the table. So tell us what they talked about there at BlizzCon.
Yes, almost everything was ruined by the internet.
Yes.
Everyone almost correctly predicted everything that was announced. So not super terribly exciting, but people still, lost their on the in the announcements. Basically, we have a new race. It's the Pandarans. They live on the island of Pandaria, which has been shrouded in mist for 10,000 years. It's on the back of a turtle. It's full of Eastern influences. It looks pretty cool. And the interesting thing about the Pandaren is they are the first neutral race in WoW. So you roll a Pandaren, and you have until level 10 to decide whether or not you want to play the Horde or the Alliance, which is pretty cool. And then you also have the new Monk class, which is not limited to the Pandaren, but it is sort of designed for them. And it's a melee class that has 3 different branches. You can do DPS, you can do healing, you can do a little bit of tanking, but it's mostly DPS. And it has a whole new bunch of animations, new play style. It's sort of WoW's take on real-time combat. It's not real-time combat, but there's no auto attack, which got a little bit of a grumble when they announced that.
Right.
Because the WoW players are not...
We want to be lazier. I don't want to click a bunch. I want to click once.
I just want to click once and then walk away and get some food and come back and kill something.
And by walk away, you mean roll away in their padded chairs.
Yes. That's what I do.
On their conveyor belts that they've installed in their homes. Yes.
And then they also did some pretty cool stuff. They're going to be redoing some classic raids. Scholomance and Scarlet Monastery are getting completely redone and rebalanced. They're redoing the talent system, which has been a long time coming, and a lot of players have really wanted that in WoW to get rid of the cookie cutter builds. There's a new WoW pet training game that's basically Pokemon inside of WoW. So in case...
Which drew huge applause.
Got crazy applause.
Right.
Crazy applause.
Really?
For...
People were really wanting that.
Apparently, yeah. I never played a hunter or a class with pets, so I don't care. But it is like, if you don't spend enough time in WoW and you want to play another game while you're playing a game that you're already playing for 40 hours a week, like... Then go meta. What's
the benefit of your pet winning?
I think that you could eventually, you could name pets, which also got a huge applause line. And it's also like it's like Pokemon. So you level up your pets, you train them. It's not limited to your character; it's your account. So if you have a bunch of different alts, they all share the same pets. And I think that there was some sort of a cosmetic effect that your character can get. I'm not sure though. I don't really remember that because I was sort of glazed over at that point.
You were just so excited about naming your pet
so
anything
excited,
you want in the world.
Excited.
As you level them up, is it exclusively going to affect when they challenge other pets, or is their level status then going to help you when you're going on raids and stuff?
It seemed like it was not an in-game thing. It seemed like the pet training is a completely separate thing. Like they had, and it's very basic too. It is basically Pokemon. Like you have 3 attacks, and you train up your attacks, and you select and choose which attacks you want to like load up for your character as you are going to fight another trainer. It's a little strange,
right?
But people seem to really, really like it a lot. So
okay, last question, I swear. I'm very interested about the pets.
Yeah, clearly you are.
People love the pets. Yeah,
people that play a lot of Japan Life are very interested in this type of thing. I get it.
Your face. When you're running around, can you just challenge somebody off the cuff with your pet, or do you actually go to like a battle arena?
They did not. At least they may have said in the panel, not anything that I saw, but I did not see how you actually get into the battles. But when you're fighting, it is set up like it's a 2-player screen. So it's like a completely separate game outside of the world of World of Warcraft.
Are we very excited about this?
I'm just thinking about it. That's all.
Now, here's what I get from this before we move on to the Diablo news and StarCraft and things of that nature. What I get from this, and Frank, this is something I wanted to touch on with you. It sounds to me like you said it's kind of their way of making it a little more action oriented. The talent system is something that they've now had a couple of years to develop this game and hammer out the kinks, and it's something that people may have wanted at the beginning, and now they can put it in. Yeah. Obviously, you guys are working on Combat Evolved Anniversary. You've said this in the past. It's a game that people love, and if you just reskinned it graphically, people would probably still appreciate the game. Yeah. But you do have to bring something new to the table because the game has been around for 10 years. A lot of the changes I think they've done in Warcraft over the course of a number of years, they've come from fans being very vocal. You guys setting up something like Waypoint, you've basically given people your home phone number and said, call us at any time and tell us what you think about our game. Did that change? Did that affect any of the development of Combat Evolved Anniversary?
I mean, I think Halo's always had a really strong community feedback system, whether official or unofficial. I did actually have people call me at home several times during Halo 2. And
how did they get those numbers, by the way?
I was listed.
Really?
Yeah, they were just like, what's the number for Frank O'Connor? And then they just called me up. So I got delisted. But we've always had a really good communication with our fans. Well, I mean, you can't just sit there and say, okay, you want the DMR to be more powerful, right? We'll just ratchet it up. You kind of have to take this combination of real data, anecdotal evidence, fan requests, and there's a blend of that. And then on top of that, designer's intent, right? And there's no sort of digital on-off switch for this stuff. It's a very analog process. But yeah, we've done it for 10 years of Halo.
So I hate to say how much did you listen to the fans, but more importantly, how loud were they? What were some of the things that you guys said, look, maybe this doesn't fit into our design strategy, but we have got to put this in because the fans, it's so important to them.
We're lucky because of the way matchmaking works, so we can take directly contradictory opinions and ideas and implement them via matchmaking.
Right.
Pistol's overpowered. Okay, well, we'll make a matchmaking playlist for that. But
right.
You have to be careful. I think the first thing you have to do is respect the designer's intent and see what kind of magic they can put into it. And then the second thing you have to do is say, well, what is actually proving to be fun or not? And you can't make it a democracy exactly, but the loudest people are the ones who are the least served, and they tend to be minorities. Right. But we have a good, I think we have a good ear for what the general community thinks and what the broader fan base thinks, and we do listen and we do make changes accordingly. Yeah.
Great. And obviously, Blizzard does the same thing and has done the same thing for quite some time. It sounds to me, as we move on to something like the Diablo 3 news, it sounds to me like a lot of this particular BlizzCon was just fan service.
Yeah.
Like, by the way, Diablo 3 will be free if you play our game already. Like, that to me is just...
If you play the game that you have already been playing for 4 years.
I mean, so let's talk about that particular announcement and just how much it means not only to Blizzard fans, but maybe to the industry as a whole. Frank, we can talk to you about that as well. They're giving away their most anticipated game because you've been fans of their products for a number of years.
And it does make financial sense. I mean, like, you're making more money off of a World of Warcraft subscription than you would off of any single game that you put out. Right. But basically, the announcement is if you basically pre-buy a year subscription of World of Warcraft, you get Diablo 3 digital delivery when it comes out. So you'll have it, you'll be ready to play as soon as it launches, you'll be first in line. And there was something else about getting in on the next beta for the World of Warcraft expansion, too.
You're actually, Annual Pass actually guarantees access to the next beta, which is a huge deal. Yeah. People clamor for these betas. Obviously, we've had this conversation quite a bit.
Yeah. So do you get anything in a bonus? I mean, not saying that the game isn't enough for what it is, but the fact, like, since you are such a loyal customer, do you get maybe specialized items or anything along those lines?
There's a mount, and I think it's listed here.
Is it?
Yes, a Tyrael's Charger you get with the Annual Pass bundle. But I'm also assuming that a lot of those people who are really crazy about Diablo 3 are going to buy the Super Gold Deluxe Edition of the game as well. So, I mean, they're going to get what they want by paying for it.
Right.
So
it's nice to see loyal customer service.
It is
you
nice,
don't really get that a lot of the time. So it's nice to see that, some of these big name, I mean, Blizzard's huge.
Yeah,
big name
and
companies,
Diablo 3 is a AAA list title. Like, it's going to be a huge game, and these kids are getting it for free, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. I mean, and to look at it from another direction, they have a subscription-based service, so they're not relying on just game sales and software sales to make their money. But I mean, they're giving away a game for free. That's like you guys going, hey, thanks so much for buying Combat Evolved Anniversary. 4 is free.
We're
Thank
practically giving it away at $40.
You really are. $40.
$40. We had to fight for that in a way. We were like, we present you with this plan. This is the bundle that this is what we want to put in the disc. And $40 is, we're in business of selling retail discs. So it was actually pretty cool that the company went along with that. But that's as close to free games as we can give away on a DVD 9.
Right.
Yeah.
And what was the struggle there? I mean, you've always been very, very open about your relationship with Microsoft. Obviously, you are an internal studio.
We are they. Yeah.
So you are
we
them.
are Microsoft. Our relationship is really with the Microsoft Studios who publishes everything that we make, and it's a one-to-one relationship. The people who work there are the people that work with us, and the cool thing about that is we get a lot of direct interaction with the technology and Xbox Live and the platform hardware and all that stuff. So it's really a nice sort of catbird seat for a studio to be in.
Right. And Jessica, to someone maybe, let's say that, and I'm not saying that you do this, but maybe to someone that doesn't play a lot of MMOs but is really looking forward to Diablo 3, would this be an entry point into Warcraft for them? Like, hey, if I spend this $150 or $180, whatever a year subscription would be, I'm getting $65 worth of free content. Do you think people are going to start playing Warcraft for this?
Well, I mean, possibly. I mean, obviously, that's always a possibility. I think that if you're not into Warcraft already, World of Warcraft is an MMO. I don't know if you're gonna delve into that world necessarily, just because it's just so much simpler to just buy a one-off type of title. However, if you're somebody like me who had played World of Warcraft pretty extensively for a while and then kind of dropped off the grid because time or what have you, this is actually enticing me enough, not only because of the expansion pack and it's tied into that, but also because you can now access Diablo 3. So that all of that combined roughly around the same time to me is very, very appealing.
Right.
Yeah. I think it's probably similar consumers, though. I think if when I saw that deal, first off, it's an amazing deal. I mean, it's a great bargain for fans. But I think it's probably the same guys, right? More or less. I think if it was like Call of Duty and you got a World of Warcraft subscription or vice versa, then you'd be able to bring in a lot more new customers. But in a way, that just kind of speaks to the sort of heart of that value as well. You're our boys, so here's a high five for you guys. So it's kind of cool in a way.
Yeah. And go ahead.
Just out of curiosity's sake, in regards to BlizzCon in and of itself, did they hand out any free pets this year? You used to get the Murlocs.
We were going to get to that in a little bit.
I'm sorry. All right. I was just excited.
Yes. There is a free pet. I'm not sure what it is because I haven't opened up my prize pack yet.
Where's your prize pack?
It's in Patrick's trunk.
Damn it.
Yeah.
All right.
He hasn't given it to me yet.
Well, this is a really good time to say this then. We have a lot of fan feedback on this show. It's called feedback for a reason, and we like having the fans on. And we typically ask a lot of your questions, and we appreciate them. We appreciate them so much that we're actually going to start giving away a prize to our favorite question of the week. This week, we found something in Casey's beard. We will get to it later on, what our favorite question is. But the prize, Jessica, that you are not eligible for, unfortunately, because you're on this panel, is the gift bag from BlizzCon. And if you're not familiar, these things are like the Ark of the Covenant.
No.
If you can only get all of this stuff if you go to BlizzCon, and typically they do have in-game mounts and pets and fun things like that. And we're going to get to that a little bit later on. I'm sorry, unfortunately, but this guy probably got some connections.
Do not take this gift bag to the Dodger Stadium parking lot.
No, not a good idea. But you can take it directly to eBay if you'd like, and I'm sure you can make a lot of money off of it. Not that we condone that type of behavior, but you definitely can make a lot of money off of it. But the thing that to get back to Diablo 3, I thought there was a lot of very exciting things they announced. The one thing that I was actually a little disappointed from hearing, and you were there, so tell me the reaction to this. Diablo 3 not launching on consoles. Now, in the past, Diablo 2 is my favorite game of all time. I was like, I will always play this on a PC. There is nothing on a console that I don't want to play Diablo on a console. And then I downloaded Torchlight last year and loved it and said, you know what? I think Diablo 3 actually would be pretty awesome on a console.
Why wouldn't you want to play on a console?
I don't know, because I was young and impressionable, and the neighborhood kids didn't want me to play on console.
Did you ever play like Baldur's Gate, Dark Alliance, or any of those?
I played, was Neverwinter Nights on consoles at some point? Was it released?
I want to say yeah, but I don't want to
know.
get angry mail, so I'm just going to say nothing.
But I played a couple things, but Torchlight really, for me, recaptured the whole like hack and slash and loot feeling that Diablo 2 gave me. me.
Which is a perfect console experience. I don't understand why you would not want to play that on a bigger TV with a controller.
Yeah,
I mean, earlier you were talking about
because when I played Diablo 2, I had a tiny TV, and now I can afford a bigger
now
TV,
it's
but
the
I didn't
future,
know.
yeah.
But this to me now it makes perfect sense, and I would love to play this game on a console, and they're not launching it on consoles. So what was the reaction like? I assume it had to be disappointing.
It was a little disappointing. Yeah. And now that you mentioned Torchlight, like I was like you, like I guess I would want to play Diablo on a PC,
right,
with a mouse. It's you just do this for 6 hours until your hand falls off. But it would make perfect sense on a console these days. I think now we have like they're more powerful. It's easier to get to. I would definitely play Diablo on a console. Well, I certainly don't want to build a computer for it. So
you were talking earlier about how they take out depth of control for Warcraft players just so they can just do one thing. I mean, that speaks perfectly to consoles. Right? Yeah. I mean, I always wanted to play a big MMO on the console anyway, just because it's more comfortable. So it's like we're just waiting. They're always promising them. They never come.
DC Universe Online is a great example of an MMORPG, which I thought did excellently on a console. I had a ton of fun with that. I never had any real major issues with it.
Combat is really fun on the console version of that.
I don't think we've actually played DC Universe Online on anything but a console in my house. I think it's and part of the reason is that the physics in the game plays like a console game. Like it's not a click and then wait for these canned animations to go. You're actually playing the game, which I think works quite well.
That's always the aspect of RPGs and even MMOs that puts me off, because those always felt like placeholders for, oh man, I wish our sprite technology back in 1982 permitted us to have an action game. And I always felt like they used the kind of turn-based card type games as a stand-in for what they really wanted to do, which would be more like a sort of Diablo type sort of action game as far as that goes. And so whenever I'm playing a true RPG where I'm just watching my mana or whatever, I always feel like it's fake and it's supposed to be a metaphor for something else, like action.
Right. Like,
so I never,
I'm not smart enough to understand what's going on.
I mean,
my
favorite RPG is Zelda: Link to the Past, right? Which isn't an RPG in any conventional sense, but it looks like one, it feels like one, it sounds like one. It's just that it's an action game.
Right.
So.
I agree. So obviously that was a kind of a bummer, right? And also the biggest disappointment for me was the classic Blizzard "it's ready when it's ready" line that they gave. About
every developer does that,
but most people give a window. Blizzard literally goes maybe 2017. We don't know.
I mean, Blizzard's in a weird position with this because it's a pretty big expansion pack for this game, but they're also coming up against Guild Wars 2. They're coming up against SWTOR. There's a lot of big MMOs that are launching within the next couple months. So I'm sure that they're trying to figure out which week is the best possible week to put this in, depending on who else is launching when.
Right. You should try aiming for an exact day, 10 years to the
day that the first game launched. Smart companies would not only re-release a game that did really well, but they do it on the 10-year anniversary, much like the Halo franchise is doing with
nice
Combat
segue.
Evolved Anniversary. Thank you very much.
Smooth,
Look, I want to just get your quick opinion on the con as a whole. We have such a limited amount of time here because we could talk about this all day, but BlizzCon as a whole, the experience for you, how did it feel?
For me personally, it's great because I get mobbed. But
validation.
Yeah, it's nice to know people care.
Yeah.
But BlizzCon is always a great convention. It's always these people are going and they are nerding out to the maximum level possible. They're having a good time. They're getting a lot of fan service. I will say that this year, talking to people who played the expansion, there was a little bit of disappointment. And I'm not sure if that's just because nothing was really shocking or surprising about it, or that people are realizing that it is there's nothing really revolutionary about this expansion. It's another starting zone with another race and another class. But it's essentially World of Warcraft as you've been playing it for however long you've been playing it.
Right.
Does anybody really want to make a character that looks like a panda, though?
Well, to clarify,
people went
Really?
nuts.
And also,
Are you
nuts.
serious?
this particular group of people, if the lore in my mind is correct, they're also drunks, correct?
They have a rich tradition of brewing. Yes.
So
they are
the
not.
answer is
So
yes.
they're all
I would like to
drunk-
make a drunk panda
So
brewmaster.
they're all drunken masters.
Yes. Yeah.
I get it. Nicole and I have had this discussion many times, not in regards to pandas, but just, anthropomorphic animals. So maybe I'm just biased.
Yeah.
Incredibly
People
biased.
were really excited about pandas.
Yeah.
Are you
drunk
serious?
pandas?
Yeah. really
I do
excited.
not see the allure with that. I see the allure with the pets thing, because that's awesome. But the allure of pandas. But see, pets don't talk in human voices, so that makes it okay.
Yeah, my pets definitely talk in human voices when we have conversations.
Oh, do they?
Yes, they do. Moving on to things that I don't need therapy to work through. As BlizzCon as a whole, like you said, it is fan service. I've been there a number of years, and they do announce things there, but because the internet spoils everything, it's not necessary to have an entire festival to make announcements at this point. People do these kind of conventions because they love their fans. And this year at PAX, you guys had Halo Fest, which we happen to be a part of as well. And this is like the first time, it's kind of your foray into the BlizzCons of the world. So how did that go for you guys?
Well, it was a different scale, right? I mean,
Well, it's, a little bit smaller.
Event, yeah. I wanted to ask Casey, did you manage to make it to the Call of Duty XP event?
I did not, no.
Yeah, because I'd love to see how those two things compared, because we know BlizzCon obviously of old, and we knew what our scale was like, but it'd be interesting to sort of see if it's the same energy. I mean, we did it, like you said, because it was the 10th anniversary. We wouldn't do the exact same thing again next year, I don't think. But we just wanted the fans to have a place to come together and hang out with each other, and then we just fill it with stuff that they'd be interested in and curious about. We did do some announcements, but it was really about getting the people there. And especially in the case of Halo, where it started off as a LAN game, where there's no Xbox Live. So there were people having reunions who hadn't seen each other since college or since various basement LAN events, and it was really cool to. The weirdest story of the whole thing was when Steve Downs, the voice of Master Chief, and Jen Taylor, the voice of Cortana, met, and I was there, and they're like, "I can't believe we've never met before." They had never met
Really?
before.
Never.
He does his
and there's been so much
ISDN
creepy
line from
stuff written about
Chicago.
their relationship
Well,
online.
I think that's on here somewhere. But it was bizarre. They had never met before, and it was a little bit electric. It was. There was a really weird moment. So.
Interesting. Well, I want to step back a second. You said you wouldn't do it next year. Why?
We might do something next year, but it's not the 10th anniversary next year. So whatever we did, we'd have to reformulate it and have it make sense. But there was definitely a big demand for us to do something annually, but we just really tired.
we got like this other game coming out too. It's we got things going on. It was right across the street from the convention center, and my favorite part of all of PAX where you guys had Halo Fest was I went up to these kids. The press night was the night before it opened, and I went to these kids that were camping outside. And I was like, what are you guys waiting for? And they're like, well, Halo Fest is opening tomorrow morning. And I was like, I'm pretty sure you'll be able to get in tomorrow if you don't want to camp out. And they're like, no, we don't have a place to stay. We're going to sleep in front of Halo Fest every day. That's your fans, man.
Yeah.
That's you. You created that.
It was nice weather, though.
It was beautiful
Seattle
weather.
cooperated, so they're still alive.
Right.
As we checked.
Well, hopefully.
Took them flasks of tea.
But on the whole, I thought it was a success. And, and we'll get into it a little bit later when we have a conversation about the franchise as a whole. But I do think the Halo franchise, there's enough lore out there and there's enough content out there for you guys to have a BlizzCon thing in coming years.
You don't even need that. I mean, Casey knows this. You can just have fans. Like they create their own events, they create their own energy, and they create their own stories when they're there. And that's where a lot of the coolest stuff was happening offsite in hotels. And that sounds worse than it is. But
no, it sounds exactly like what it was.
If you saw these people, you wouldn't be worried about that. But there was, it was just a bunch of friends getting together. It just happened to be tens of thousands of them. So
it's my favorite convention of all time, by the way. PAX is just fantastic. If you go to a bunch of them, it's the best one. Anyway, usually I was going to say this for the end of the show, but it makes sense to do it now. Our question of the week, I'm going to actually ask right now because we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. Congratulations to White Wolf Assassin. You won the Blizzard prize bag. But he has a great question. Do you think MMOs have a place on consoles, and can they ever compare to their PC counterparts? Interesting question for you. I think 10 years ago, people would have said first-person shooters have absolutely no place on consoles. And here we are 10 years later talking about this particular franchise. But we'll just kind of go down the list. Do they work on consoles? Can an MMO exist on a console?
I think it can, but maybe not yet. I don't think anything that has been tried on a console has been hugely successful. I think people still want that keyboard and mouse interface. I think there's too much going on in most MMOs to be slimmed down to a console controller.
Right. And then Jessica, on the other hand, you have a very high opinion of DC Universe Online.
I do. I think they can. I think that was just scratching the surface. It's just going to get bigger and improve from there. And I think DC Universe Online would have actually continued with the amount of success it had when it was released had not the PSN situation occurred.
Right. Which was unfortunate for quite a few people,
Yeah.
especially the people that worked on the game who were, put a lot of hours into it. And then Frank, for you, again, this is a conversation we had earlier where Halo's playing Halo for the first time was a lot of people's first-person shooter experience on a console of any sort. Here we are 10 years later. The thought of not having first-person shooters on consoles on the eve of 3 of the biggest first-person shooters of the year all coming out within weeks of each other. Are we going to think this 5 years from now? I mean, where are we moving as far as MMOs are concerned?
I think Casey's right that you can't replicate mouse keyboard conventions on a console easily, but I don't think you should. I think you should come up with new conventions for that mode of input. And certainly with voice recognition, Connect, and other things like that, there's lots and lots of ways to interact meaningfully with your game. And in ways that would be more fun for me, because I don't like the RPG conventions. I don't like turn-based mechanics, even when they're in real time. But just change it. I mean, that's what Halo didn't do anything particularly new. It just solved for some problems, right? So you have this minor look magnetism, and it just kind of works. And they simplified a lot of things, but it feels natural, and it's kind of the basis for dual stick controllers. Somebody just has to put the same amount of problem-solving invention into an MMO on consoles. I think the hardest thing is the online infrastructure, right? Because you have a lot of peer-to-peer. They're definitely moving more towards server stuff. And I think as everything goes into the cloud, even that distinction is going to kind of go away. So I think it's totally doable. Just you can't make a PC RPG in a console. You got to make a console MMO. And someone's going to do the Halo of that, or someone's going to do the the Metal Gear Solid of that.
Right.
So
I know I'm going to keep a really close eye on Witcher 2 releasing early next year for the Xbox 360. I think that's going to be a great indicator of where these things can go.
And I mean, you look at Skyrim is probably one of the most eagerly awaited 360 games, right?
Yeah.
And it's an RPG,
right?
So it's doable. Putting it in an MMO space is different and difficult, and there's a lot of problems and challenges. Someone will do it. I mean, it's a matter of time. It's just a case of, is there a demand for it? And you'd have to train the population like you did with FPS games. This is a kind of game you will enjoy. You'll enjoy interacting with these people, and you'll enjoy interacting with these systems. Somebody's just got to, push it.
Yeah. So basically, in short, humanity needs to be trained to be friendly to each other.
And to their pets.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to their pets, of course.
Absolutely.
Speaking of things that you kind of questioned whether or not there needs to be a demand for them, let's catch up on some 3DS news.
Yes.
You can't compare the pets to 3DS.
With Miss Jasmine. No, I agree with the pets thing, and I think there are a lot. The other night, I was like, I really want to play like a card game, right? Like on my iPad, and I downloaded Shadow Era, I think is the name of the card game on my iPad. Till like 4 a.m. I played to buy additional cards in this fake card game. So I get it. But the 3DS, Jessica.
Oh, the 3DS.
People have made fun of it, and there's the news. There are things that come out, and the additional analog stick, and we've made fun of it over the last couple weeks. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of people have some sort of Nintendo console in their household. Nintendo still has enough of an embedded fan base to continue to put stuff out for something that maybe hasn't sold as well as a lot of their other things. But a couple of big announcements for the 3DS.
I've got the list right here. So 3DS and Wii are going to be getting Hulu subscription service. I'm assuming
3DS?
Yeah.
It's getting Hulu?
Yeah.
That's pretty much summed my reaction up as well. Now, I'm assuming this is Hulu Plus because of the $7.99 price tag on it, and not just accessing Hulu, because that would just be stupid.
Right.
So you're getting Hulu Plus. But again, 3DS, I don't.
Perfect
Wii
sense
maybe,
on the
but
Wii. I know a lot of people use that as a Netflix terminal anyway.
Sure.
So, yeah.
I'm just not getting it as well. But
Right. I mean, the question is, does the
is.
hardware deliver, right? I mean,
It's
does it...
just the screen size. I mean,
Right.
like, I'm sure it can stream and do all that, but the screen size just seems like not a good place to watch TV.
Hulu, however, offers Korean dramas, and Netflix does not. So there you go. That way,
there you
I
go.
know.
All right.
Now
I
it makes
I
sense.
think 6 people
Total
just made a
sense
switch.
now.
I think 6 people said...
I would watch it on the Wii, but not the 3DS. Comes out in 2011. Like I said, $7.99 a month. Mario Kart is apparently running at 60 frames per second.
And that's interesting. I mean, you're a guy who deals with the challenges of hardware and its limitation. 60 frames per second, even with 8 gamers playing together online. Does the 3DS do that? I feel like they're lying to me. I don't know why I feel like this isn't
That
true.
sounds very suspicious.
I mean, can we see rage happen on a 3DS?
Maybe. I mean, I just don't know what. Look, I don't do frame counting when games come out. But
I want all the answers
wouldn't-
from you, Frank.
I can tell the difference between 30 and 60, but I don't know if I could on a 3DS.
Right. So
On that.
were we assuming that maybe by compromising, like their limitations are a little less so because the size is
something's-
smaller?
When something is at 60, you sometimes just get a kind of butteriness to it that you can't quite put your finger on, and that's going to work great for a racing game. So if it does it, that's great.
Right.
I just didn't know that the refresh rate on that screen is going to do that justice. In fact, when I read this list, I thought that was the Wii version you were talking about. But,
I was a little confused. I thought to myself, how is this even possible? And even and then the 8 gamers playing together online, Nintendo is, they haven't they have a reputation of not being the best online supported hardware out there, and so this just seems like they're doing a lot of things, a lot of ambitious things for the first time with this game, I think anyway. And so I don't know. I just feel like it's
just such a beloved title. I mean, if they're going to try and push the envelope, they should push it with this one.
Right.
And people will make the effort for something they love, like Mario Kart or Zelda.
Right.
People go, oh, okay. But have they improved the friend code thing?
'cause
Is
that's
that
awful.
still?
No, I think friend code's still there, the
That's
way it
still
always
how
has
it
been.
works?
Yeah.
Oh.
Is it?
Yeah, that's weird.
Is it? I have not turned on my Wii in.
It's because of the friend codes, though, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It's just like my friends are like, listen, 3964297.
Yeah.
I'd love to play with you,
lowercase
but
b, uppercase A.
I don't know
It
who
is
you
the
are.
most insufferable online system.
I understand, but I mean, when you think
They
about
might
it,
not
that
even-
system's for.
What if they're not real people? What if it's just
children.
bots? And you just you wouldn't know.
You're right. I wouldn't know. Are you guys? You're real though, right?
As far as I know,
either
yeah.
that or we have a really good swearing algorithm for children. So.
You can start using that, by the way. We won't even bleep you out. We can't afford that.
The friend code system with me, I mean, I understand why it's there from a parental standpoint, maybe, but
Yeah.
there should be an option, which I don't think there is, where you can turn it off and just have
Yeah.
it be a regular reach out kind of thing, and it's just not there, and that makes it incredibly frustrating for those of us that are semi-mature enough to.
To know our friends' real names,
Sometimes.
I
our
was
virtual
pointing,
friends'
like,
real names.
I don't even know why I was pointing. I was like, I needed somebody to point to.
You
so.
probably need to point that in a different direction if we're speaking maturity.
Yeah, I know. That was a fail.
So that's a pretty ambitious thing. 60 frames a second. Like you said, though, if they're going to do it, doing it on a racing game makes a lot of sense. You're not dealing with a lot of background. You're not generating a lot of background on Mario Kart. So it's something that, they can really get focused on the playing, the way the game plays with that particular frame rate. But the interesting thing for me that I saw on this list, outside of certain game announcements, is 3D video recording. And I only know this because I think Verizon or T-Mobile they've based an entire marketing campaign around the fact that one of their phones can capture 3D video.
Yeah.
And I forget what phone it is, but is there such a demand for this thing that it needs to be in an announcement? Do people want 3D video recording?
I just think it's cool. They're just updating it.
Yeah,
I think it's
I
cool.
think it's
It's
cool
something for
that-
kids to do.
It needs to. I think it's cool enough, like you said, that it
Yeah.
it deserves an announcement.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I'm not going to be a run out and get a 3DS now because I want to be the first adopter of being able to record in 3D video. Because I mean, obviously, I want to see if that is actually the case. But I mean, that would have me. If I did have a 3DS, I'd probably screw around with that video recording for a week before I stopped touching the 3DS.
What if you could
again.
raise 3D animals on it?
Yeah. 3D
No,
pets.
honestly, I don't even care. And I didn't like Nintendogs or cats. So you can just take that whole pet thing
Well,
and
if
shove it.
What if it was
because
something
So much
with-
directed at me for no reason.
because you're the one setting me up.
Those are softballs, man.
Whatever.
Journalism
just because-
001.
Hey, my questions in regard to World of Warcraft and the pets there make complete sense.
Yeah,
because
absolutely,
if
yeah.
you could level them up and unlock certain things for them, and then they supported you in your own raids, that is a big deal.
Yeah, that would be worth doing. Yeah.
Harumph.
That's pretty good.
Thanks.
Yeah.
There'd be balancing issues with the hunters, though, right? If suddenly you have this like super overpowered pet that maybe a paladin doesn't get to have.
Yeah, and that's probably why
paladins
they're
apparently
not.
can't raise animals.
Yeah,
Like,
and that's probably why it's not
they're
in the
not
actual.
nurturing.
yeah,
Not
you can
naturally,
control
yeah.
all of God's magic, but you can't raise a dog. I'm really confused about
You
this.
can control the magic that God has decided to give you. That's how paladins work.
Forgive me, sir. So I don't know. I think it's pretty interesting, but again, it seems like at least they're trying to move away from certain gimmicks like adding a second analog stick, and they're at least trying to give you some stuff that maybe people want to use. Mario Kart being the big one, the NES Kid Icarus being remade in 3D for the eShop.
I want to talk about Kid Icarus. For a
Do you really?
second. Yeah, it's my biggest beef.
Why has it not come out yet?
No, like I had
Do you
an
want my pen?
NES.
You can
I had
wave
an
it at
NES when it first came out,
Right.
right? And we had all sorts of games that were pretty cool, but weren't like AAA, like Clue Land and Ice Climber and stuff. And I got Kid Icarus, right? And it's a pretty decent scrolling shooter, kind of with platformy look to it. And then this Kid Icarus legend just grew and grew and grew until eventually Nintendo capitulated with the real Kid Icarus remake.
Right.
Where did that come from? Nobody gave a crap.
Why
in, like,
is it good?
19 Cake when it came out. It's like it's public domain Greek mythology. I've no idea why that became so big.
Really?
It's not a beef with the game. It's a beef with the
the community,
the clamor
Yeah.
for it in the 20 years leading up to the re-release.
I mean, the E3 a couple years ago at their press conference, I think the biggest applause came from Kid Icarus flying across the screen.
Yeah.
It's complete because they just built themselves up into a frenzy about it from nowhere.
I
Because
just
it was
feel
like,
it's that whole nostalgia thing that people
but
get.
they
latched
weren't. But they
onto.
weren't playing that back in the day.
And he was also
they were playing
in,
like Gradius.
Yeah,
and-
if you didn't have a Mr. Gaddies,
Yeah.
you probably weren't playing Kid Icarus.
Yeah.
And Kid Icarus is also he was in the Smash Brothers on the Wii
Yeah.
too.
Right.
So that was like sort of the first like
taste, yeah.
hey, we'll give you guys a
Yeah.
little taste of this
Yeah,
thing.
throw
But
them
it
a
did
bone.
like that's not a very fun game to play, Kid Icarus.
I'm going to reserve judgment on that, right? But like, because I didn't play it, I didn't play the sequel. I played the original. I liked it; it was okay. But
Yeah.
I was so baffled by that like groundswell
How
of
is it?
remake Kid Icarus
Right.
of all the things.
Yeah, I guess maybe it's just like they were looking at their stable of characters that they haven't revisited again, and Kid Icarus was on there.
I think you know what I think happened. I think there was a fake rumor that it was coming back, and it just snowballed.
They're like, we have to do it now.
Yeah, yeah.
Now
No,
they
but-
want the
yeah.
kid.
Yeah.
But they still haven't done it yet, so we'll see. This is interesting because you brought this up earlier. Are we just misremembering what was good back then? Because you said
I hope not on
I
November
asked-
15th.
Right, November 15th, 2005.
After all that crap
But
I
you
just
said there's a lot of people, a lot of people that have talked about Combat Evolved Anniversary, where they're like, you should have never changed this, and you're like, if you go back and play that, it's not that great.
No, actually, I didn't say that. I was really talking about network performance when I said that. But they're right.
The game is flawless. There's
Actually,
nothing
if you-
wrong with the original game.
If you go back and play CE multiplayer on a LAN, it's still a really awesome experience. But what people were misremembering is like how well it worked on XB Connect and XB Kai, which
Right.
are these tunneling services that let you kind of skip pre-Xbox Live restrictions.
Right.
And those weren't fun because you'd have like 6 players before it just started to lag out completely and started acting insane. But the people who wanted the Halo CE multiplayer remade verbatim, they're right. It would have been cool. It just wasn't a reality we could address.
And you also don't want to completely just say you to the entire Reach community that has been working with this particular engine.
and demanding remakes of all those maps. Right. So to put them out in a different game at $40, it would have been dangling a carrot in front of them and one that they couldn't quite reach. So if you
stop
wanna
complaining,
play
people.
maps,
You're covered on all fronts.
yeah.
I do think that is an interesting question, though, and an interesting point that you brought up is because, as an example, I just played Eco again in HD, which, as far as I can tell, there were, other than just kind of a glossy once-over, there were any gameplay advancements or changes made to the gameplay itself. And I forgot, and it's only, maybe 6-7 years since
it's
that
not
game?
that old.
It's not
Yeah.
that old, or at least Shadow wasn't that old. But I mean, and you go back and you play, and it's not that long ago, but I forgot. I mean, I said out loud, I forgot how questionable some of this gameplay is. Specifically with Yorda. She's obviously an ever expanding problem. Trying to drag her around everywhere. But that was one of those things where then you start questioning, couldn't they have just tweaked her just a little bit more? And would that have, had I not known that they weren't going to do that, would I have picked this up again?
Now, if they did tweak the gameplay a little bit, do you think there'd be an outcry from gamers saying that it wasn't a pure sort of
I think you're
re-release?
always going to get that outcry from people that played it the first time around and loved it, just because
But I think
why
they're
is
gonna
my
bring
band
in-
getting popular now?
Yeah.
It's that whole mentality. But, there's something to be said when there's obvious issues in the way a game is made, obvious hang-ups, and those aren't addressed. And just kind of, at least with these HD remakes, floated over under the guise of, well, we're just trying to
Remain faithful.
It's like, no, your camera sucks.
Right. And that's a development challenge you guys had where you were like, they want a pixel for pixel remake of the game, but you have to also introduce, the hope is to also introduce a new audience to this franchise.
Yorda, if we had a Yorda in Halo C, it was a library, which is this infamously difficult, hard to navigate, repetitive level.
Right.
And we did use this as an opportunity to just relight it and retexture it in ways that were actually conducive to finding your way through it. This is actually a great level if you know your way. But if you don't know your way, and that's like 95% of people who played it, it sucks, and it sucks the life out of you. So now it's much more satisfying experience. But that's a pretty small change that we didn't touch a pixel of physics or actual gameplay. That's just pure navigation and graphics.
Right.
But we did that in a couple of places just to make it a little bit more exciting. We actually, in Pillar of Autumn, we changed the lighting, so we made it brighter in a lot of sections and much, much darker in others, so it kind of plays on the tension of that. But it's not it's not the same as changing gameplay. The multiplayer's all changed, of course, because it uses the Reach engine. But
Right.
yeah, we were scared to touch it, to be honest.
I saw a graphics comparison between the original and the one that you guys are remaking now, and there was a huge difference in tonal quality to what you were playing as far as the way that the colors are portrayed and things of that nature. Do you think you're going to find a lot of backlash on that because it kind of atmosphere adds so much to story and what you're doing? Yeah,
we've experienced it in little discrete pockets. People complain about the level 343 Guilty Spark, which used to be this really misty swamp with like 4 megs of VRAM, right? So the mist is right in front of your face.
Don't run too fast into the mist.
And definitely, we had to strike a balance between what is the point of remaking it and redoing the graphics so that you're seeing something new versus 1080p version of the thing exactly as it was.
Right.
And so we decided to just shift the balance in favor of the new. And I think most people have just reflexively got that. They're like, yes, I appreciate that when I press the back button, I'm getting something new because that's what I bought. And if I want to play it the way it was and the way that Bungie intended it, just press the back button, bam, and it's exactly the same. So,
and I think it's interesting what you brought up a little bit earlier too. Frank said he has not seen one person. First of all, everybody at 343, they are fans of Halo. People that now work in this on this franchise all came from other places because they love Halo, right? So you have people that have been playing this game for 10 years. They now have the option of playing the classic mode or the updated mode. Yep. He's never seen one person play through the game in only one mode.
Yeah,
which is fascinating.
Yep. And I told you, there's natural places where people like remember that they should switch as well. And I've seen it. Any cliff edge, right? People walk up and like gaze, click, gaze, click, and then turn around and go back. So,
interesting.
Yeah. But nobody plays it in, except testers. Sorry, testers.
Poor guys.
They have to do that.
No, oddly enough, Shadow of the Colossus actually offered that as well. Not during the gameplay. You actually had to go back into the menu and change up your settings. But they did offer the original versus the updated.
That's how our features started.
And I would have never gone back to the original.
But it is interesting to see in certain areas how things have changed quite a bit. Last question, the 3DS, it is my opinion that they can keep rolling out these things, but on the whole, I think software is really going to start selling these units, and they need to start rolling out software instead of these, little bells and whistles. Yeah. It's my opinion. But the last thing, touching on portable gaming, does a game like Halo work on a portable console?
It would on the PS Vita. It's got 2 analog sticks and a high-resolution screen. That's really what you need. Triggers, analog sticks, and a screen where you can actually make out what you're doing. Yes. It's not going to work on the 3DS as it ships out of the store because it only has 1 analog stick.
Right.
But yeah, it could work. And it'd be interesting. Like, that's something I would play. I would sit on a couch and play an FPS game, even on an iPad. Like, if I could use an Xbox 360 controller with an iPad, I don't know why I wouldn't go to my TV, but I feel like I could be on the bathroom playing an FPS. Right?
I actually really understand what you're saying right now. It's quite
Version America lets you play Halo. Or not Halo, I'm sorry, I'm getting my stuff
He's
confused.
like, what?
Yeah.
Where?
Surprise! Nope, sorry.
Hold on one second, I just got to call. We need to get some money from Richard Branson.
I meant Doom, which, those screens are still pretty small, but it does a decent job.
Can you play LAN with people on the
You can play on the plane
That's
with
awesome.
other people.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
That's
Verge is fantastic, by the way, if you travel.
I'm trapped in the Alaska Mileage Plus ecosystem.
You're all in the West?
Well, I just gave you guys...
West Coast
it's
up and
actually
down?
awesome. They always give you free upgrades. I love it. So. But I'm trapped.
Switching.
So Halo does work on a handheld. Do handhelds? I mean, the Vitas or the Vita, the Vita. It
is
looks
it Vita
like
or Vita? Which
we've
is
said
it?
both, so I'm never going to commit. Just so I'm never wrong.
Cover
I'll
your
just switch
bases.
it up.
Yeah.
I think it's Vita
I've
is what
heard
we've
Vita.
agreed on. Correct. So the PS Vita, but people are finally. This is the handheld console that's bringing the actual console experience to your hands. Will it be able to? Obviously, graphically, Uncharted looks fantastic. But can you get the console experience? Are we going to have a 100-hour portable game? Will we ever see an Elder Scrolls game on a handheld console? Do people want to stare at a screen that small for that long?
That's the big question for Sony, right? Because people talk about how they're competing with the iPhone and the iPod Touch and stuff. That is the heart of the question: is do people want to have these longer, deeper experiences on a handheld? I honestly don't know the answer. I don't, but that's not because of anything other than I've got a 3-year-old monster running around my house. I don't have time for anything, right? But that's going to be the question: is do people want little, discrete, disposable, digestible experiences, or can they commit a long time to these kind of projects. Definitely in Japan, like Monster Hunter kind of proves that people will invest a huge amount of time in a portable experience, but they do it in little bursts and they do it on their commute. And I don't think that's how American kids play.
Right.
And see, that's what I was going to suggest with the commute thing is I personally would go along the lines of little digestible experiences, but I would not be afraid to go and delve into maybe a larger game if I can take that game off my console with me, which is the whole transfarming thing. So that is where I would play kind of the deep level console game, but only because I had to go travel and cover some other event and I need to take my game with me.
But a typical multiplayer FPS session is an exact example of like an iPod experience in terms of length.
Sure.
It's like 5 to 10 minutes of say Slayer, and you can duck out again and feel like you had a full experience. So maybe that's the battle they've got to fight.
I mean, in approaching designing, let's say, a Halo game for a handheld console, do you try to design something different? Or do you try to kind of recreate what you guys have done the console experience? Or do you maybe only do a multiplayer experience?
We always design to whatever the hardware is specifically. I mean, Halo is a good example of that. It was like, what have we got? We've got a console with a hard drive, an Ethernet port, and a dual analog sticks. And the game adapted to that, and that's where a lot of the invention came from. Was necessity being the mother of inventions.
Right.
And you got to make it. You got to make the right thing for the right system. There's some cool looking FPS games on the iPad, and they suck.
Right.
The controls won't work, but they look awesome, and they have so much potential. But it's just ultimately wasted. So
Not there yet.
that's why Angry Birds is still dominating because it's perfect for those devices.
And then Casey, in your area of expertise, does an MMO work on a handheld? Like I look at an MMO experience and I go, if I could play Warcraft on my computer and do all of my grinding on a portable device, it would change my life.
Or your pet raising.
Or your pet raising on my portable device.
I would totally do that.
Actually,
Does
no.
that work?
I think things like the mini games aspects of MMOs probably could work. I would not want to play an MMO on a handheld.
Right.
Because when I am playing a game like that, I am sitting down. There's going to be a good 2-hour chunk where I'm playing it. I'm doing a raid. I'm running a dungeon. There's something productive is happening in the game. But
productive is, by the way, a very relative term too.
But yeah, I think if you're going to do something on a handle, it's got to be short form. Like I have put in console level hours into things like Battleheart or Puzzle Quest, but it's in like 2 or 3 minute bursts.
Sure.
So I don't know if an MMO would work on a handheld, but maybe aspects of an MMO would.
Right.
There was an app, and I wish I could remember what it was called, but it was for Fable 3. And I know Fable 3 isn't an MMO, but it was
pub games.
But
Yeah, it was pub-
maybe that
was it pub
where you
games?
could gather the gold and earn the gold and then apply it to your game in the console. And I thought that was an ingenious way of doing it.
Yeah.
And that's something I would look into, like you were
Yeah,
saying.
it's
in
a way of
regards to
doing
an
something
MMO.
that in the actual game might be really tedious and boring, but if you can make a fun disposable mini game out of it, it's not that bad.
And if it has a payoff in your real life or your extended gaming or entertainment life, then all the better. Yeah.
Moving on to this is I think the most fascinating story we have here. I am the 49%. It's an Occupy Wall Street reference. They're so smart here. This is a pretty interesting thing. The first figure I think is going to be shocking, but then I'll tell you the next two, and it's funny how things have changed. EEDARM, an entertainment research group, did a study. They found that 49% of consumers had not purchased any downloadable content in 2011, which I think is a strikingly huge number considering how much downloadable content is now important.
Well, what are the so it's only console owners, right?
Yeah. Right. HD 3500 HD console owners have not purchased any downloadable content. However, the number of consumers who didn't buy DLC in 2010 was 60% and 66% in 2009. So we're rapidly moving into a direction where everybody will at some point have purchased downloadable content. But some of the reasons why people don't buy downloadable content, I think, is the shocking part of the story. 47% say privacy. I think the PSN, that whole thing probably had a lot to do with that. But the one that I think is really interesting to me is that there's no ability to return downloadable content. 38% of that 49, they say that they won't want to buy it because if they don't like it, they can't return it. What is that? I mean, is there a way to rectify that? I mean, what's stopping people is that if they can't return it, they can't buy it. But we're talking about things that on the whole probably only costs $4 to $15.
I kind of call BS on this too, because there are demos for these games.
Yeah.
You can download the demo. You can. Most demos are pretty decent in length. You can get a pretty good idea. I mean, a great example is Peggle. I felt like I played like that entire game, and all I was is the demo. And I never, unfortunately for Peggle, never advanced and bought the game because the demo was so good. I'm like, okay, that scratched that itch and call it a day. But I do think that the whole, if you're, the ability to go in and try it, and the ability to go in and read the description and all the media that's out there covering it, if you're trying to return it, you're probably trying to be a bit skewed.
I'd like to see the methodology on that as well. Was that question posed to them, or were these answers that they came up ex nihilo?
I'm assuming they had, A through Z to choose from.
Exactly. And I think if you didn't put that in front of people, I don't know how often people would bring that up. But once you see it, you're like, oh, that's right. I can return it. I am outraged now that you've brought my attention to it. So.
Right. 49%, though, a fairly large number. I expected far less, especially when you consider that a lot of let's say a lot of first-person shooters, great single-player campaigns, robust multiplayer experience, but then they can extend the life of the game for a number of years by adding download forever and ever and ever. One would assume that one of the most important parts of game development today is what are we going to roll out in the future? But we're looking at half of people not even buying that stuff. So, I mean, is that number shocking to you? I'm sure you already knew what it was anyway.
We know what the numbers are, obviously, down at the granular. But, I mean, there are other gating factors, like how many people have Xbox Live Gold who are playing multiplayer stuff and buying DLC and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I think the number one obstacle, forgetting the list, and the list is good, but the number one obstacle is it's quite hard to do. It's hard to do it on a PlayStation. It's hard to do it on an Xbox because consoles aren't PCs. You can't set up an account and just have it go. You kind of can. I realized that. I was buying some Zune movies the other day. We're having movie night, and it was like, oh, here we go. And then I'm like, oh, actually, I just had to press 2 buttons. So it's easier than you think it is, but like if you haven't done it in a long time, you probably don't know that. And that's exactly what the trap I fell into. Is like, I haven't bought anything on a console for a really long time. Like I'd fallen through the PSN security whole thing, and I haven't turned it on since.
Right.
But
I lost my Hotmail account. That's
well, I just thought
it was a porn account
Blu-rays,
anyway.
But yeah, I think that it feels like it's harder to do because there's no keyboard and you don't have like an Amazon account. The easier it gets, the more people are going to do it. I think it's just make it quick, make it easy. iTunes is click, go, done. That's the model. So.
Right.
So do you think it was a fear of technology, not based off of my privacy is going to be taken from me, but a fear of technology? Like you took such a back seat and hadn't bought anything in so long. Like they must have changed it since last time I was on. I don't know if all my passwords are up to date. Blah 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 blah. Convince yourself not to.
You're kind of touching on another aspect of it. Like if you ask adults if they're nervous about buying something on Amazon or iTunes, they'll just say no. Like 80% of the time. But you have kids interacting with parents, and so there's a gulf here between what's happening with a parent's credit card and who's making the purchase request, which is little Timmy. Poor little Timmy is blamed for everything. But little Timmy says, Mom, can I have $14 to buy X for X? And then they have to have a conversation, then they have to go put in a credit card. It's like consoles are played by younger people than PC games. And so that's part of this gulf as well as the parent-kid relationship as well as in here. So
right. And we've obviously had this conversation quite a bit. It's something like Rage, which I absolutely loved Rage, right? But it ended very abruptly. For those of you at home that haven't played through it, it ends very abruptly, which leads me to believe that the downloadable content will not only finish the game, but it'll be fantastic. And they probably said, hey, we should probably pull some of this back. Do you feel, Frank, and I know I'm asking you to speculate here because you guys obviously aren't doing this because you recreated a game for the fans, basically. But do you think developers are maybe pulling back on their initial kind of offering to the consumer to have better downloadable content in the future?
I doubt it. I mean, like, yes, there will be some, of course, but I don't know. I know a lot of people obviously working on games, and they're all putting their all into that disc. And disc is sometimes the limiting factor, right? So you can fit X amount of campaign, X amount of maps on disc, blah, blah, blah. I have never actually met a developer who deliberately hid content on it. It's happened. But I've never spoken to anyone who was in charge of making those decisions, hid content on disc. We're not doing it. Right. Like, we're not going to put DLC on a disc and then have you unlock it. Like, and the one thing I'd ask kids who do get bummed about the cost of DLC is it costs a lot of money to make. Right. It's a team of dozens of people working for months and months and months to make it. It's not free, and it's a business. So it's but I don't think people are. I think when you see a game truncated like that, we went through the same thing with Halo 2. People felt it ended on a cliffhanger. They wondered if we'd made more. We didn't. It ended on a cliffhanger, and that was maybe a judgment call, but that was what we intended to ship, and that's maybe how it felt. But it was but it was like a 9, 10, 11-hour experience, and nobody was complaining about the length. It was the abruptness, and that was a dramatic decision, and rather than we're saving it for Halo 3 decision.
Right. Totally. And Casey, as far as the MMO space is concerned, when we talk downloadable content with a lot of these console games, downloadable map packs are the big thing, right? People feel like, oh yeah, for this extra money, I can get a lot of new experience from this game. When we talk MMOs, people are paying monthly fees for this, and they've played a lot of the content. They need full expansions.
Yeah.
So is there a way to maybe start releasing smaller content packages for something like WoW, or do they need to have the $60? You're essentially you're paying for the game all over again with the $60.
There is a mix. Some patches are better than others, obviously. A lot of them are just like a bug fix or a UI fix or something really minor that you wouldn't even notice. The last patch for the most recent WoW expansion is adding like an enormous new dungeon that's free as long as you're paying the $15 a month to play it.
Right.
But it is not something that you have to pay extra to get. It is included in the price of that game. So there are not only revamps and repolishes to the game as they do fan service and figure out what works and what doesn't work, but they are also creating new content specifically for whatever that level of expansion pack that you're on is.
Well, also, I remember they had special events as well, where just at Christmas or Halloween, they have a whole bunch of different side quests that you now could take, and you get a bunch of different loot and blah 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 blah. So I mean, nobody paid for that either. So that was really nice.
Yeah, but that is expected in an MMO. If you're not doing that, no one's going to be playing your game.
It's a living world, right?
Yeah,
and it has to feel like a living world, and part of that responsibility falls on your guys' shoulders. So.
A heavy responsibility.
Yes.
Yeah. Very heavy. Unfortunately, we don't have 5 hours to talk about all these things, so I wanted to thank you guys very much for being here. Frank, what are you going to be doing on November 15th, by the way?
I believe I'll be in Century City at the Hyatt Regency, and then heading over to a launch event at the Microsoft Store.
Because you got a little game coming out.
Yeah, we have Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary comes out on November 15th, 2011. 10 years, day and date, since the launch of the first one. And I believe we're having launch events at most or all of the Microsoft stores in the U.S.
Wow.
So, there will be a big one in Seattle and a fairly big one here in L.A., but sort of fan events.
And for those of you that got Frank O'Connor's home phone number all those years ago and couldn't find him since then, now you know where he is on November 15th. And Jessica, as usual, thank you so much for being here. We look forward to seeing you raise your pet in Warcraft. And Casey, thank you for dressing down a little bit for us, man.
I'm in my civilian clothes.
We appreciate that very much.
Every once in a while.
And thank you guys so much for watching. Check back next week. We're going to be talking Battlefield 3 and Uncharted 3. And in the meantime, we have this massive film initiative on the website right now, g4tv.com/G4films. Your favorite video game characters done in the most disturbing manner possible. Watch that.